Moving on to our last speaker from ZNet, Alexandria Shaner. She's going to be providing an editor's guide to critical media literacy. She's from ZNet, znetwork.org, which I'm going to post the link here, strongly suggest you check out. Put that in your rotation of your media diet. Lots of great stuff there. She's also a writer for Extinction Rebellion. Her work has appeared in Common Dreams, Foreign Policy in Focus, LA Progressive, Waging Nonviolence, Anti-War. There were a lot of other ones, but those are the only ones I wrote down. So great to have you as always, Alexandria. Please take it from here.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much, Ryan. And thank you to all the fellow speakers tonight. I think we're going to shift gears a little bit for this last presentation. So yeah, I'm just appreciative of everyone's work so far in really connecting the intersection of critical media literacy with activism and what's going on in the world right now. So I'd like to start this presentation by laying out not only what this section will be about, which is really kind of an actionable skills share more than a topical presentation, and to explain why we decided to include it. So this is our editor's guide to critical media literacy, and I happen to be a self-taught media professional, and as it turns out, so are most of my fellow editors currently at ZNet. And I mention this not because I'm saying that you all need to skill up to become actual editors and journalists, unless of course you want to, but to highlight that though these skills aren't commonly taught in general education, they are absolutely learnable, and they are urgent and critical. So the intention behind this presentation also is not to cover everything, but just to open a pathway to further develop these skills. And I'll be sharing just some of my own editorial experiences in the hopes that they're useful to any of you who are interested in developing your own critical lens through which to engage further with the media. So very, very briefly, because we haven't actually stopped to define this concept yet tonight, what is critical literacy? Basically, it means being able to read, think about, and question the world around us, especially when it comes to issues of power and justice. So it's not just about understanding what we read, but it's also about noticing who produces and disseminates information, like in the media or in schools, why they create it, and how it affects people. So when we think this way, we can better understand the world and become active participants in transforming our lives and maybe even our societies. And then specifically in terms of media, critical literacy equips us with the tools to really think more deeply and independently about the media that we're consuming. And what that does is help us resist manipulation, understand underlying biases, make more informed decisions about the information that we accept and then share and then act upon. Why is it important for you to engage with the media like an editor? Why did we decide to frame this Skillshare in this way? I would say that in one word, it's about empowerment of yourself and of your communities. You can and should have agency in how you interact with the media. And you are also, in a way, already kind of an editor and publisher within your own circles when you choose to share and act upon media that you consume. And then this has a ripple effect beyond your circles. So with that kind of framed out for you, let's jump into some actual skill building. Starting with what are some helpful tools to establish for yourself? And I remember after my presentation at one of our previous teach-ins, the non-cooperation with Trump back in March, the most common question that I received after doing my section on the media was about where and how to find trusted sources of independent media. And Ryan and I, as well as a few of our participants in that teach-in, shared a short list of some publications and some journalists that we personally trust and respect, which is great. However, just sharing a source list doesn't really help you make up your own mind, and it tends to sometimes result in information silos. So we also advise people to check out platforms like ZNet. This is because Z posts not only original content, but also curates lots of previously published content from sources all over the world, from major outlets to personal blogs, including work from many of our panelists tonight. And this daily editorial work is a service that we try and provide to our readers to introduce a diversity of sources, authors, and topics that are also seriously and independently vetted. And that's not to say that you should take what we post as infallible. You absolutely should not. But we aim for our editorial work to be a helpful leg up and a time saver for our readers. And we're not the only publication that does this. I'm just using what I know tonight as an example. And then importantly, in addition to that, we also always cite the original publisher on any reposted work so that you as a reader can then choose to follow any of those sources directly if they are particularly relevant to you. And that's one great way to kind of build your library of trusted and useful media sources for yourself. Now, to really get the critical lens working, you can replicate some of our most basic editorial work for yourself by just having a little bit of knowledge and resources in place. Three really easy things is if you know the writer and their work or their style, if you know the publisher or platform, and if you know the topic being written about. So these 3 points can be helpful shortcuts to being fairly confident that you have trustworthy information, but they're definitely not absolute and they're not always available. So critical literacy is about questioning at the end of the day. So when in doubt, it's also important to just ask others who might know the topic well to give you their opinion on the quality and the value of the material that you're looking at. And then over time, you can also even develop a group of people who you consult with and learn together with, kind of like a media reading group, or it can be something less formal. But these are basically all just basics that you can start to build up for yourself to give you a leg up in assessing and trusting information and its meaning for yourself. Now, that's kind of in an ideal world. And what if you find yourself without access to these resources or outside the bounds of these constraints? So we'll spend the rest of this presentation talking about further developing your critical media lens. Like I said, no one editor, no one person can be or needs to be an expert in all things, nor familiar with all authors and all publications. However, by using a critical media lens and a bit of a cautionary logic, many mistakes can be avoided. So as just a few starting guidelines, I'll share with you tonight with a few examples of how to apply a critical lens to your media intake. The number one thing that I would suggest is understanding motivations. This is absolutely crucial for identifying bias and manipulation. Some starting questions that you can ask yourself is follow the money. We talked a little bit about this with Sonali. Who's funding this? Related, but not exactly the same, is follow the benefit. Ask yourself who's benefiting from this. Some further questions you could frame it as is who's behind this message? What are their interests? Are there hidden agendas? So understanding motivations overall is one of the most important points. And because of this, I'm going to take a little more time on this one and give a couple real life examples. So to start off, like a really easy thing, and this is hypothetical, but you can imagine, take an article promoting Tesla's wonderful environmental contributions, and you find out that article was funded by something called the Elon Musk Foundation. Now, that should make you skeptical based on an obvious conflict of interest. Going more subtle from here, say there's another article promoting a Democratic Party candidate written by a Democratic Party insider. Now, this article needs to be considered differently than a similar article written by an independent author. So it's good to consider things from diverse perspectives, but you want to avoid inadvertently becoming a mouthpiece for powerful people, corporations, and institutions. Last, a really, really common example these days is greenwashing. I recently came across an article, a paper advocating that deep sea mining would be a boon to the health of the planet and to world peace. Now, that would be really nice. But a few clicks of some of the hyperlinked citations revealed that the main source of this analysis turned out to be funded by the company Lockheed Martin. So, oh yes, one of the largest military contractors in the world and one of the biggest polluters in the world is promising to share resources peacefully and fairly in order to lead a green energy transition. That just doesn't sound very likely. I don't need to be a geologist or a policy wonk or even a climate scientist to raise an eyebrow at that. And I'm sure neither do you. All right, so moving on from that kind of like number one thing to look out for, understanding power structures. So rather than feeling pressure to become an expert in one topic or hyper-informed and stressed out overall, critical literacy can really enable us to understand the relationship between media and power. We talked a little bit about this tonight. If you want more in-depth on this topic, I encourage you to go out and check out my previous presentation at the March teach-in or lots of other resources on this relationship between media and power. And just when you engage with content, understand how it fits in the general power structure. Moving on from here, another great tip is recognizing stereotypes and social constructs. So again, we had a bunch of examples of this tonight where the media often perpetuates stereotypes about race, gender, class, or even like entire nationalities of people or other aspects of identity. So learn to spot these, question their origins and their impact, and ask how they influence your perception of different groups. And from there, you can challenge these harmful narratives. And this is especially relevant in defending against these divide and conquer tactics that are really meant to weaken and control the public in the service of powerful interests. An important next one is evaluating credibility in sources. As we all know, in the age of digital media, misinformation can spread really quickly. So don't forget to stop and assess the credibility of sources, cross-check information, avoid being misled by false or biased reporting. I know this sounds daunting and maybe like extra work, but it does get easier with habit, and it relies heavily on common sense. So you don't need to be the expert, you just need to use your sense. And it just takes a few extra seconds usually. Another one that Jesse covered in his section tonight extensively, so I really don't need to elaborate with examples, but deconstructing media techniques. So this can be advertisements, political campaigns, news outlets, all using various techniques to persuade, influence, and sell ideas. With critical literacy, it involves understanding how these techniques work, such as their use of emotional appeals, selective framing, sensationalism. Recognizing these strategies helps us see beyond the surface level content and understand what are the intentions behind this message, whether that came from the journalist or the editor or the publication. It can become obvious to us. And the take home being is, if clear language isn't being used, especially in something like a headline or reporting facts, we should be asking why, and we should assume that it is not an accident. Last, a really easy one that absolutely anyone can do and is also crucially important is resisting the race to be first, resisting the pressure of this like 24-hour news cycle or constant drip feed of information through our phones. Especially with news-related content, there's often a flurry of substandard at best to outright wrong content at first. So patience and rigor should always be prioritized over the race to be first. And for content relating to breaking and unfolding events, it's really good to just make sure the analysis and facts are solid. And when in doubt, wait before taking this information seriously, let alone sharing it or acting upon it. So I know that was really quick, and there's so much more that we could cover on this topic, but all of these points are what you can think of and hopefully utilize as like an ongoing skill building thing that you can do. And the main take home is that instead of passively consuming media, a critical approach encourages active engagement with it. It allows us to ask deeper questions, challenge assumptions, and form our own opinions, which then empowers us to actually participate more fully in discussions and in decisions. On the flip side, it also helps us to recognize the power of the media itself in shaping society and how we can use that power collectively to advocate for a positive change. And I'll wrap up by just saying that you are all very, very welcome to continue this conversation and to seek more resources by interacting with us at the Z community anytime. And I appreciate your attention.
Thank you so much, Alexandria. Excellent stuff as always. couple questions and then we'll get out of here because we are running super late. But it's been a great program. So appreciate everyone who's stuck around, and all of our speakers have been excellent. Um, I really like the idea of it's like this drip of content versus being patient. And I guess a lot of that has to do with knowing what you're being patient for, right? And for me, that looks like waiting for someone I trust to publish an article about it, whether that's Klippenstein or like one of the podcasters that I actually trust, or Ryan Grimm or something like that. Is that, I guess, how long does that take to build out this trustworthy network of like, okay, there's been a shooting. I'm not gonna listen to what Twitter is saying right now. I'm gonna wait until a story. Like, how long does that take to find those people?
That's a excuse me, a really good question. And I would say that there's not really a set like stock answer that I can give for how long it takes. And it's actually a dynamic process where there's people that I have trusted in the past that I now feel a bit differently about. So it's not a one and done thing either. And I know that for me, developing myself as an actual editor and publisher, I'm still learning. I definitely come to it with humility and a learner's brain. And that's why I advocate critical literacy for everyone, because I know that I'm not always right. One easy thing is, yeah, definitely don't trust the Twitter buzz. Wait until you can find some verified information, because even people who you trust sometimes fall for that trap of wanting to be first or getting caught up in the buzz. And all I can say, I can't tell you how long it's going to take, or, if there's a threshold you need to trust somebody or not trust somebody. But what I can say is the more you do this and the more you engage critically, the more your own confidence and comfortability in your own critical skills to constantly make those dynamic judgments is going to be stronger. And that you don't need to do it alone. People think like, oh, I need to be the expert, or if I ask a question, I'll seem like I don't know what I'm talking about. Do this in community, do this in dialogue. And it will be more effective, and you will spread it among your people.
Excellent. All right, last question. When you're vetting a journalist, when you're vetting a story, I've found that like you're saying, you trust someone, you trust someone, you trust someone, and then something happens in the news and a blind spot gets revealed. NATO, Zionism. There's these things where you think someone's totally on your side about everything, and then it's like, whoa. So I guess when you're looking at people, how much are you going issue by issue? This is the person I trust on what's going on in Gaza versus like the person. Like I trust Ken Klippenstein or Ryan Grimm or someone like that. Like do you separate it by issues with people at all?
Um, yes, in terms of like needing to not spend all day every day doing only editorial decision making. So like there is a bit of like shortcuts that are sometimes taken, but I would say theoretically, in an ideal world, what I would trust is your own critical lens and like some of that logic that I laid out, where you're looking at basic heuristics and norms of um you know how are they presenting this information? Where did this information come from? Is it verified? More than just, I tend to trust this person's analysis. We all need to take some shortcuts, and so that's fine. But again, it's a give and take. And yes, some people I'm like fully in agreement with on certain issues, and then there's this one issue where I'm like, where is this coming from? And that's fine, and that just happens. But again, that's the importance of develop your own critical lens and learn how to be in dialogue with others about it, because it's also possible to change your mind.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, the focus that is most beneficial over the long term.